Their English debate took place during this election. It was independent media against the establishment.
And now, nobody likes you.
Tell us who you are, tough guy.
These were right-wing people.
You, my friend, became the face of establishment media that night.
I've never seen such a bunch of unhinged buffoonery in my entire life.
I crashed out because they weren't following the rules.
Their English debate took place during this election, and it was a very interesting debate. It was kind of a little bit, it was what it was, but it was the end of it, the conclusion that Poilievre really kind of landed some big blows, and Carney had some interesting moments. Blanchet landed some blows as well. So the conversation quickly became about, wow, the end of that debate was very interesting. And then we're waiting for the leaders to do their post-debate questions, and it never came. Then slowly but surely, we start seeing video footage emerging from the media filing room, where a big fight broke out, verbally, I'll say. And it was, mainly between Rebel News and everybody else as well. I think True North was there as well. And became quickly the narrative was, it was independent media against the establishment. And you, my friend, became the face of establishment media that night. And I remember watching the Guillaume Bexty video, and I was like, whoa, I think that was Stu. And I was like, oh shit, I've never seen that side of him. So I'm just mainly curious. We've kind of heard the stories from Rebel News' perspective of they were just simply trying to ask questions, and the mainstream media didn't like that they were being allowed to ask questions the way they were asking, or at least how many they were being able to ask. And that is where the tension started to lie. From your perspective that night, I'll just ask from just a general perspective, we'll start there. Where was the tension starting?
So the tension kind of started even before the French debate. So when they sent out the call for like media accreditation, they're like, we only have so much room, because you saw where we were. We're in like I think it was like a green room, or like where they film shows and stuff. So it was like a just an empty set room. So they said, only send the media personnel you absolutely need to cover the story. So for my paper, it was just me and a photographer. And they're like, and for time, we're only going to credit one reporter per outlet. They can ask your question, follow up. And if you have more, you can go back to the line and ask your question. So by Ezra's own words, when he posted on Twitter, that they tried to get 16 reporters in there and have all 16 get to ask a question. They only ended up getting 5 or so. And first night in French, you saw them there. They asked like minute 30 long questions. And like Poilievre only got asked 3 questions because of that. And as we all know, he was doing like 4 at least. So that was sort of where the frustration started building with me, because it's like, this is our one chance to ask as many questions as we can. We have like them here for as long as we can. Let's try and speed things up. And to start it off, the 2 years previously, the commission had said, Rebel News, you're not allowed to come because you're not media. I don't agree with that. I think even if you just have a cell phone, I made that joke, but even if you just have a cell phone, you can do good journalism. It's like being a criminal. It's not about really like something inherent in you. It's an act you commit. Your tools might be different and how you do it, but it's like, I'm not going to stick up my nose at that. But like, if we're like, follow the rules. I crashed out because they weren't following the rules, I think, is my whole thing. Where it's like, we all agreed to do one question, one follow-up, and get back to the back of the line, and you guys kind of took advantage of that. So that was where my frustration started. And then, so before this video starts, Keen Bex is sitting behind me, and I can hear him talking a little bit louder than usual about how he's going to ask all of the leaders to condemn homophobic comments that Ryan Turnbull had made, I think, like 15 years ago when he was 30. And maybe I had a moment of insanity where I was like, I can reason with him. I think he can think of a better question that will be more productive. So I tried to like sort of do that, and like kind of and then he got into it about how I was like defending homophobia. And there's a certain like, okay, so the funny thing that always made me laugh about the phrase locker room talk and how that got turned into very like, oh, it's all about being misogynistic and violent towards women. When I was on sports teams, what I would describe as locker room talk is some of the most homoerotic shit I think I'll ever hear in my life. But also they're sprinkling in a little bit of homophobia so that they can have plausible deniability. Like big hulking rugby dudes being like, hey, nice dick F word. Like like you're like, what is happening here? So that was sort of like, that's what it kind of felt like what Turnbull was doing when he said like perverse effetization or whatever. I'm not going to say it again, but that's what happened. Is like, basically I have the reverse Ron Burgundy thing where if like you ask me a question or I hear a question in my vicinity, my instinct is to answer it straight up. So he asked me like, oh, what word did Turnbull use? And I just said the word because I thought we were just having a conversation. And that's when the camera comes up and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. And it's like, he just caught me filming on it. And my biggest fear was he was going to chop and screw that video up like the Homer Simpson clip. But to his credit, he just played it straight through. And then I guess the rest is history. Like when Ezra starts chirping me from across the thing, I look over. You probably noticed there are like 5 or 6 people in different spots around the room filming it. So I was like, at that point, I was like, all right, in for a penny, in for a pound. I've already fucked myself, so I might as well make the
You went all in.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
That's what I was saying. Like that's why I was yelling. I'm like, if we're gonna do this, you're gonna hear what I'm saying. I'm gonna enunciate. I'm gonna project. I didn't do 3 years of theater in high school for nothing. So.
Oh, too good. But I guess I kind of want to go back to your earlier point around, what is journalism? Because I really think that underneath all that shouting, there really is that bigger question of like, what is journalism? What is journalism? What is not journalism? When you talk about, Ottawa basically granting some people the access to the leaders and not access to others, and that whole court battle that Ezra and friends went through to actually get the opportunity to ask those questions. I'm just curious, like, what do you define as journalism, and what do you think real political journalism is versus political activism?
Well, I think because it's like my thing is I don't want to put on a jersey. I don't want to have to ever think it's like, oh, this is going to be like inconvenient or harmful to my side. This is going to sound like, get ready to do the jerk off motions. But like, if there's any side I'm on, it's my readers, it's the Canadian people. Like that's the shit. They're like, I'm trying to be a annoying and a pain in the ass to the people in power, ask some questions, and try to keep them at least as consistent as possible, or at least if they're not being it, make it very obvious they're not being consistent. That's what I think. That's sort of what, if you're doing journalism, whether it's print, whether it's radio, TV, or if you're just doing like a live stream, your whole thing is you're trying to get, like I said, like you're like a thief. You're trying to get in where the valuable shit is, get in, get out, while drawing as little attention to yourself as possible, which I failed at the English debate. I did a lot of attention to myself. But you get the goods, you get out, and you give it to the poor, like Robin Hood. Like it's like the people who have the info, you get from them, you give it to the people who don't have the info. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to make sure that the info that you're giving to people is as accurate and as useful and as sort of like uncontaminated as possible.
For sure.
I know I have biases. I'm a human being. I believe things. And I think that's also an important thing to know when you're a journalist, because if you don't know what your biases are or where you lean on a certain thing, how are you ever going to recognize it in your work and make sure it's not in there? So that's the thing. It's like whatever tools you use or how you do, I think it's more about conduct and intent sort of thing, right, and sort of what your output is sort of thing. I don't think I'm a gatekeeper. I don't think there's like a good definition of journalists that won't exclude people that should be included. Right.
And I can appreciate that statement. I can appreciate that take. And it's even for myself, I'll speak for myself. It's something I even felt from you when we first met in Ottawa at CSFN. Mm-hmm. That was our first time being anywhere in a media room in our lives, but you still treat us as one of your equals. And that's something that we appreciated about you. And so I will even admit on behalf for our viewers, like that is something you were actually very consistent on. But in
Appreciate it.
the vein of being consistent, is that where can you appreciate the work that Ezra's done at this point with Rebel News, or is that where the feelings?
Well, that's the thing where
stop?
that's what I mean, where the conduct changes. So when you are registered with Elections Canada as a third-party advertiser, and you are putting on ads, like that's the thing where Ezra Klein has put on a jersey. He's very much coming for this because he wants to defeat Carney and he wants Polyev to win. And I think that's the difference between a journalist and partisan comms. It's a very thin line. And like that doesn't mean that if you're reporting something that is going to be helpful to one side or you're reporting something that's going to be hurtful to one side, that makes you cross the line. Because obviously if a lot of times accurate reporting is not going to be very fun for whoever it's about. It's about the intent. So when you are buying advertising trucks to just drive around that photo of Carney at the music festival with Ghislaine Maxwell to go, just asking questions, and then your reporting has fundraising stuff, so you can get sent down to a Caribbean vacation, so you can hang out in the bike shop for 20 minutes and then go back to your hotel. Like these are things that you're not supposed to. Like being a journalist is about your conduct, and there's a certain level. I don't want to say chastity, but it's about saying no and not like accepting these sort of benefits or putting your thumb on the scale for one side. So when you are a registered third party, you have those ad trucks, and then you're reporting on the truck like it's just something you stumbled across and like, oh, look at what are these endeavoring citizens doing? That's, I think, where it crosses the line. Am I saying that there's nothing Ezra Levant has ever done or ever will do that is journalism? No, because it is, like I said, like it's what you're doing in the moment. It's the act you're committing.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the thing where I'd have to go back through his whole thing. But like in that night when he was there, he was not there acting as a journalist. He was there acting to do comms and to disrupt. Like when you see this, like how he was behaving on the CBC set, you don't have to like CBC. I have a lot of gripes with the way CBC has covered a lot of things. You don't do that. You don't just go stand on their set and demand to go on while they're on commercial break. That's not how you conduct yourself. That's I think more of where I would draw a line. It's like, because you're just being an asshole outside of being a journalist. It's just you're not being conducive to anything productive or anything that will help Canadians make their decision.
And I think that what you kind of talked about there is the tension a lot of people, specifically on the conservative side of the aisle too, are frustrated with the mainstream media. A lot of people view the mainstream media as you said, comms for the Liberal Party. And there's a lot of scenarios where that's happened. Do you feel from your perspective, I mean, and we're not going to try to make you the poster boy of talking about all about mainstream media, but just from your own experience, do you think that's true? Or at least it's true in certain aspects? Are what people feeling real?
Yeah, no, I think it's real. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have these sentiments. And when you like talk to them and you dig down on it, and this is true in the States too. It's when you dig down, a lot of it is they're mad about like the news anchors they see on TV. And they've extrapolated that across the board. Like here's a perfect example. I know a lot of conservatives don't like Rosie Barton, CBC, David Cochrane. Guess who broke Buttongate? My girl Kate McKenna at CBC. Like that's the thing where it's like we're not all on the same playing field. Like I have 4 roommates. I want to make I had people coming up to me at the conservative convention be like, "Oh, you're all high and mighty. You guys with your like talking about like all this fancy stuff. You think you own everything?" It's like I rent. I don't know. Like, well, how much do you think I make? 50 grand a year. I'm not in the lap of luxury, guys. So there's like that's where you nail that. And there's absolutely things where when I'm watching CBC or less Vashy. I love Vashy.
We all love Vashy.
Yeah, everyone loves Vashy. But like I'm screaming at the TV half the time when I'm watching the CBC, and it's like when a lot of it also is just the fact like if I were king of the world, we wouldn't have panel shows. There would be no pundits. So it's like, I think that is a lot of it, where it's like there's the mainstream media, I think is like, I think the most helpful thing is like defining your terms. Do you mean the news anchors and the outlets? But I think individually, I think even the people who don't like the CBC, when you get them and ask them about different individual reporters, they still think they're doing good work. I get compliments from people. I'm like, wait, I thought you didn't like me. And they're like, oh, you're Tantrum Boy. Oh, and it's like, yeah, that's me. And it's like, so it's like since that's happened, I've had people who were like in my comments calling me Tantrum Boy and all that shit. And then I'll like tweet something and they're like, oh, this is a good story. And I'm like, short memory. I'm not going to remind you. Yeah. So it's like, that's the thing where it's like, it is definitely real, and the grievances are real, and I probably share a lot of them.
Right.
But we're not. It's a very large ecosystem, and don't throw us all out with the bathwater.
For sure. Well, even just like a little small story before I send it over to Reg here. It reminded me of when I did a whole video about Judy Trin on how she conducted herself at one of Poilievre's press conferences. I wasn't a fan of how she conducted herself, and I made it very clear in that video. But I think it was like 3 hours later after I posted that, I get a DM from you. And you're like, hey, I have a couple questions for you. And I was like, please don't come for me, man. And you're just like, oh, it has nothing to do with that. I was like, okay, we're good. It was just one of those moments. I think there's an example of like, again, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like there's certain reporters at certain points that aren't showing their best selves. But there's other times they do decent work. And so I think you make a good point there. Go, Reg.
Yeah, and Judy's been all great on the foreign interference stuff too. So that's the thing.
Totally. Yeah, for sure. And I kind of just really wanted to poke at that piece that you brought up there about like separating the news anchors from the general. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. I just kind of wanted to poke at that piece around like separating the news anchors from the journalists. And I'm wondering, do you not see the news anchors maybe as so much journalists then? Because I know when we were watching the election, and we brought this example up so many times, when Charlottetown flipped over to Liberal and they go, oh, Charlottetown is safe. It's like, how is that journalism? Like,
yeah, no, that's the thing where it's like, I want to be clear. I'm not trying to do that where it's like, I'm trying to separate myself from because they're absolutely part of the whole thing. And that's why I know that like those sentiments and the grievances are real, because that's where most people are going to consume their news, even with like the rise of like alternative media and streaming and all this stuff. When most Canadians like on election night, where were you guys watching election night?
We were in a studio.
We were in, yeah.
Oh, you were in the studio? Okay, yeah. Sorry. Well,
yeah.
I mean, but like most people, even I think we're probably tuning into, like when I was at the Conservative convention and they were swapping through CBC every once in a while. Seeing Rosie looming over the CBC convention was wild. But yeah, there is sort of stuff where it's like, they're like, you can tell they're like happy or they're cheering or they'll make those sort of comments, or we've got a body language expert to tell you why Carney did so well in his meeting with Trump, sort of thing. There's actually stuff where it's like, you are right to be pissed at that and think that's dumb. We're not perfect. We're all there's a lot of shitty criminals who are very stupid, who do stupid crimes. Like there's levels to it. And they are the most prominent ones. They're the ones most people are going to see. I just say it to be like, well, just when you're reading a story and you do like it, just make note of who wrote it. It might not be mine, but it might be somebody's. And I think once you start, don't just read the headline, look at who wrote it. And I think if you make note of that a little bit more, I think it'll give people a better view of the totality of mainstream journalism.
Okay, well, I'm a big guy on trust, and I know I asked the trust question earlier, and I just wanted to kind of like ask you this question again, but in the context of media. Then, when you're seeing kind of the stuff happen with these news anchors, when we view what's happened in the media room with you and Rebel News and friends, like, do you think that this is degrading the trust in mainstream media for the public? Because I really feel like the public right now is kind of moving away from that idea. And we see that in polls and in Statistics Canada's reports, like showing that trust in institutions are rapidly declining, and trust in media especially. And I'm just wondering, do you think this is adding to that, or do you think that, you know, even your outburst is kind of like trying to bring some authenticity back to media to say like, hey, it's not all just canned. Like there's real people behind it.
Well, and I think that was part of it, where there is a level of where a lot of us aren't sort of aware, and when I talk to some journalists, especially like more established ones, like the ones that are in the trenches with me are very aware of like a lot of the issues. But when you have sort of the more established ones, they don't seem to understand what the problem is. And they think it is sort of just like, I swear to God, if one more person suggests that we just need more fact checking to improve, it's like, but they don't trust us. Why are you sending? How would fact checking work when they don't trust us? They need to trust the fact checkers. The fact checks to be effective, and they're telling us they don't trust us. And at a certain point, like when you're like gamifying it, and you have like a counter for, like, this is how many times Trump told a lie. And like half of them are like, is that a lie? Or is it just Trump just sort of just riffing? Like that was a joke or something. Like it's where it all is sort of, there's definitely a responsibility journalism and quote unquote mainstream media has for it. But like you said, we are sort of like entering a very low trust sort of, like era. But that's the thing, where it's like, I grew up, I'm 32. One of my like biggest like sort of influential moments growing up was like post 9/11, watching the news coverage about that, finding out it's bullshit, and one of the most trusted journalists of my teenage years and 20s being Jon Stewart, who like does a show on Comedy Network. And it's like, that kind of frustrated me about Jon Stewart, where people kept pointing out, it's like, you're the most trusted newsman in America. And he's like, I'm not a journalist. I'm just a comedian. It's like, well, sorry, dude. It's not your choice anymore. Great power comes great responsibility. You're a journalist now. You're a funny man, but you're a journalist now too. Like, you're doing the news. So I do, like, this has been a long time coming. And there's sort of like some chickens coming home to roost when it comes to these institutions. And I don't know if there's been enough soul searching to sort of really reckon with that. There's been a lot of it, like I said, where it's sort of been like, well, it's that Kevin Brockman thing, and this reporter puts the blame squarely on you, the reader. It's like, well, I mean, if they don't trust us, maybe there's something we did. Right. So that's, I think, where I would put it.
Do you think that maybe mainstream media just needs to look inside themselves?
Oh, gosh. I mean, kind of, yes.
Yeah. For sure.
That was so wild. I still can't believe that. And because that's the other thing, where it's like, when we talk about mainstream media, it's like, did you guys look at Rosie Barton's like the comments under her post after that, like her first interview with Carney?
We saw some of them.
It's like you think the conservative rhetoric to defund the CBC is bad. Just one like sort of harsh interview with Carney, because that's, I think, a lot of it is, and I don't know if you guys were at CSFN this year, but I have I don't agree with everything. Barry Weiss, she was at CSFN, and one of the things she's talking about that like with New York Times and a lot of these mainstream is sort of audience capture. And I don't think there was any better like evidence of CBC's like sort of, maybe not audience capture, but the audience they're dealing with when you saw the reaction to Rosie's interview with Carney. Like, they were eviscerating her. They called her a right-wing hack. Yeah. I'm like, do you know who Rosie Barton is?
Yeah.
Should I get the selfie with Trudeau? Like that's I think a lot of it, where it's like there's there's some capture there, and there is, I think, I don't get the Trudeau bucks. You think that's on top of my salary? No, that all goes to the business. So I think that's where I think most of these things are happening, is when it's like it's trickle down from the decisions that are made at the top. I think it was like Noam Chomsky.
Yes.
Where he was like, you wouldn't be in this position if it's not that you're being paid to think something different. It's just if you thought something different, you wouldn't have that job. So I think that has a lot to do with it, where it's like maybe these people aren't like, they're not being sort of like paid. They're not paid shills for the Trudeau government, but maybe they wouldn't have like a high ranking position in CBC if they didn't already think and sort of lean the way they are. So that's, I think, a lot of it too.
That makes sense. And I think we'll end off with this is with whatever happened that night. Do you wish it went a different way? Do you wish that it happened differently, or were you kind of set and like, I'm glad I reacted that way?
Two parts to that. So one, I wish I had just been like, you know what, just let him ask his question. Because it's like, I reserve the right to ask stupid, annoying questions that people think aren't relevant or helpful. So it's like, I should have been like, you know what, just ask your damn question. Once I had fucked up and started and realized I was on like 9 different candid cameras. As far as the actual words I said, I feel pretty. My conscience feels pretty clear about it. The Shoresy voice, I can't do anything about. That's just when I get excited, I just sound like that. So yeah, and it was kind of funny. So we didn't know anything else that had happened. So all I knew was that interaction with me and Ezra and Keen. So when they did come in and cancel the thing, I genuinely thought, I was like, holy shit, I can't. So I went up, I followed them out. I'm like, if you're worried that like something might happen during the question period, I will leave. I'll just go. I'll take the fucking whatever shit I get from my editors. Because I'd rather that than deal with be responsible for this and have to face the rest of them then. And the guy just pointed to the courtyard where there were like 50 Montreal police officers sort of just lining the pathway out. And he's like, do you think that's why they're here? And like sort of kind of like, you think you're like a little half pity, half sort of like, you think you're pretty fucking tough, don't you? So I don't think that I was the reason they canceled it, but I do wish it had gone differently, as in I'd never opened my big ass mouth.
Well, I guess on that last note is, did you feel like at any point, because Rebel News has their side of the story. I know Sheila Gunn Reid talked about how it felt like it could turn physical, it could get violent. Do you feel at any point it could have turned that way at that point?
I mean, there was some other stuff that happened. Like there was some stuff that got kind of physical later in the night as people were going out. Yeah. Between me and Ezra, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's just if you're just listening. I'm not exactly a peak physical specimen, and I don't think Ezra Levant is the kind of dude who is elbows up very often either. So I think there was very little chance of either me, Keen, or Ezra getting into anything more than a slap fight, and that was even a low percentage there. But it got real tense. So if something else had gotten actually physical, I think there was the one guy who slapped the phone out of the guy's hand. So it was rationing up, and they brought in the cops. I don't know if that was maybe CBC was being extra cautious, but clearly they thought it was bad enough that they needed to ramp up security in case something did happen. And I'm at least glad that didn't.
Yeah, well, that's fair. I mean, that's kind of me and Reg's perspective on that. Was we saw leading up to the the establishment was not happy with how the French debates went from the questions, and you could tell they were trying to find something to get those English debates canceled. And my friend, I think you gave it to them. That's just my perspective. You can't say it was completely not part of the whole galaxy of considerations. Obviously, it was one thing. I don't know if it was the final straw, but it was one of them.
It was the opportune straw.
Yeah.
It was the opportune straw, because after hearing David talk to the commissioner
the elections, the debate commission, whatever.
Yeah, the debate commissioner, and he's angry. He kind of sounds like a petulant child, honestly, and complaining, and the commissioner is basically saying, well, what were we supposed to do? They took us to court and won. Are we supposed to go to court, spend all that money again, and lose again? No. And You could just see David just like
in fairness,
losing his mind.
Third-party advertising thing might have been a better argument in court because they weren't third-party advertisers the past two elections. And I did the like timeline in my head. So it's like it was the Cormier, I think this guy's name, Cormier interview on Cochrane.
Yeah.
And then they did that interview and cut to break, which is I think is when Levant went in and like confronted Cochrane. And within that time, I think Levant had just come inside from like his interaction with Cochrane to start discussing things with me from across the room. So it all happened in very, very quick succession, I think. So
Right.
Fascinating. But like the debates, nothing happened during the debates while everyone was writing. That was the weird thing.
Right. Interesting.